took an unsophisticated family and put the kid at risk and fouled up his education and his chance to profit from his scholarship because they failed to give him services, failed to give him his rights, failed to identify him. What does 4 or 5 years have to do with it?
I knew he wasn't learning the way he should be learning. I could see it. My other son didn't have this problem. My daughter didn't have this problem. Stevie struggled to get what he got. And they just, you know, I mean, I would talk like to a stone wall. And they would just pacify me. And they wouldn't act on it.
A high-ranking person in the Greenwich schools who's familiar with the case said, you know, the truth is that Stephen is a very nice young man, but he's just not that bright.
Well, he's not that bright because he was never given the right chance to
What
prove.
do they call bright? What do they call bright? You know, Steve Young went to Greenwich High. Steve Young is a great kid, a great boy. He's achieved an awful lot. There's a paper, an article that came out in the Super Bowl Sunday paper that Steve Young's record, football record, wasn't as good as my son's. My son had a better record in football than Steve Young. Here, Steve Young is making $7 million a year, and they've closed all the doors of all Division I schools to my son. And it's not because he's not smart. It's because the town of Greenwich did not teach him, address his LD. They wanted to throw away his LD problem and just get him through the system without spending any money on Stephen Vizzo.
John Rittner is superintendent of schools in Greenwich.
Obviously, something happened. And then we become the fall guy, if you will, for whatever happened to the particular youngster that led to some problems. And I don't know what they are. I don't care to know what they are. I think, to me, that's a rather clear case of us having done our job and an appropriate job, and somebody after the fact saying, oh, no, there's something wrong here, and obviously you're the guys who are at fault.
So what do you want from
What I want is what he's due. What I want is compensatory education for each year that he didn't get special education that he should have. He should be entitled to some type of education to assist him to make up for that.
In a preliminary hearing, the Vizzo's case was dismissed. Attorney Laviano has appealed, and the case is pending. Even though most parents of disabled children do not take legal action, the possibility always exists, and that's changed the climate for many teachers.
If a parent used to have a concern, they'd call you on the phone and they would say, hey, listen, this doesn't seem to be going right. Let's sit down and talk about it. And you had that kind of relationship and you can do that. And now, and certainly this isn't all parents. I mean, the vast majority of parents are more than pleased with what we do and they still do that. But you get the one or two that don't call you and instead you hear from their lawyer and it just takes your breath away.
Fran Berger, a special education teacher in Westport, Connecticut, says she's always worried about potential lawsuits.
Whenever we get a question from a parent or something that doesn't sound quite right, we go, legally, what do we have to do here to be sure in case down the line we can get sued, that we're covered? I mean, that's how we think, as opposed to what's the best for this child? What can we do now creatively that will make the child successful in school?
No, wait a minute. What do you mean, that's how we think?
I'm part of a 7th grade team, and we think that way all the time. Legally, what do we have to do here? And if we don't know, we get somebody in who's an expert in the law to say, this is how you have to be sure you're covered in case, in the future, a suit is brought against the school.
You mean not what's best for Nancy or Joe?
You would hope. I mean, certainly the law was intended that what is best for the child is what is being done. But when that doesn't happen, and that seems to be more frequently, it's more a matter of have you followed the letter of the law? Not have you educated the child or have you done what's best for the child.
Great. 20 years ago, when the law was new, the challenge was to find the disabled children and get them into school. That's happened.
A consonant E, A, wait. Wait.
Very good. Let me see that handsome face.
A consonant E, A, steak.
Today, the public schools enroll more than 5 million disabled students.
Who would like to come put it in the bowl? Me. I'm Mel, come.
Some labels have changed. Today, fewer children are being labeled mentally retarded or speech or language impaired. What has not changed in 20 years is labeling by race and gender. Boys are more likely to be labeled special education than girls. African Americans are more likely to be labeled than whites. and African American boys are the most likely of all to be labeled for special education. But is the system, as it exists now, racially discriminatory or not?
We know that minority children are more likely not to receive the kinds of services that they need in the regular ed system and in the special ed system.
You're saying yes?
Yes, and special ed is used as a place to move kids from a regular classroom out into a separate setting, and we're very concerned about that.
You're saying yes?
Yes.
I know personally, have 3 friends, African-American males who were PhDs who used to have the label EMH, educable mentally retarded, when they were in school. I know them, they're competent professionals, and they don't want people to know that for a lot of good reasons. And this has been a problem throughout.
While the number of students in some categories has gone down, learning disabilities have shot up. Today, over half of all children in special education are labeled learning disabled. In 1975, it was only 22%. But what is a learning disability?
Okay, come on in, Katie.
Katie Bosco is 13. She has the symptoms of a learning disability, average or above average intelligence, but difficulty in processing sounds in spoken or written language.
Can you say man?
Man.
Can you say man without saying
An.
Great. And can you say block?
Block.
Can you say block without saying b?
Cur.
Can you say tone?
Tone.
Can you say tone without saying n?
Earn.
Can you say scold without saying s?
Katie is being tested in a private clinic. Most students are tested in
Can
school.
you say steak?
While testing can reveal learning disabilities, it is often not called for until children are failing.
We're often too slow in intervening with them. We don't intervene with them in the 1st and 2nd and 3rd grade. We allow them to fail in school for 3 or 4 years. Babies, you know, 7, 8-year-olds failing in school who should be getting the kind of support that they need to be successful.
How old were you when somebody said, hey, you're learning disabled? Maybe, Joanna, let me start with you.
It was like in 7th grade I was tested for a learning disability, and that's when they told me I had a learning disability. But before that I never really knew, except I couldn't like comprehend things that easily.
They didn't actually put me in special education class till at least till the 8th grade. So it's like I kept on going through all different types of schools and just in regular mainstream classes, and it was tough because I kept on failing my classes and stuff.
Some teachers aren't as understanding as others, and when they didn't know that you didn't have a learning disability, they'd be like, why don't you understand it? What's wrong? I mean, I've explained it more than once, and you have to tell them that you have a learning disability, and it's like, it takes a little longer for you to understand or for it to like click.
Do other kids treat you differently?
It depends. Like, sometimes like when I'm reading out loud or something, I can't get the word out, I start stuttering. And I've like, call me stupid and stuff. So.
And what do you do in that case?
Nothing, just take it.
How do you feel?
Kind of low.
When I was a little kid, I used to cry a lot at night, and my mom would come upstairs and she'd say, she'd say, why are you upset? And I'd say, because I'm so stupid. And she'd say, you're not stupid, you're just different, you know, you just need accommodations. And that's all that's wrong with you. And that's not bad.
So you're getting services now?
Yeah, I'm getting help and stuff like that.
Do you go to special classes? Are you in the mainstream?
I'm in some mainstream classes. I'm only in one special education class. So it's easy now because they taught me a lot of things at this school, and I learned a lot of stuff in this school a lot.
What happens in the Bible story?
Most of these high school students from Rockville, Maryland seem pleased about the help they finally got. They may be luckier than they know. 12 years ago, Dr. Sally Shaywitz of Yale University began keeping a record of the reading skills of more than 400 students in Connecticut. Dr. Shaywitz conducts independent tests of these students.
Our data have shown that if children, for example, are diagnosed as reading disabled in 3rd grade, if we look at them in 9th grade, 74% of them still have a difficulty reading.
Which is to say that the intervention, whatever it is either insufficient or improperly aimed or something.
Well, I think that in terms of how important a problem this is, as affecting so many, and what the consequences are, we as a nation have really not done very much about seeing that children learn to read.
So you identify people in 3rd grade, and 74% by 11th grade are not fixed up.
Well, they're still having problems in reading, significant problems.
Imagine if you ran an auto body shop and 74% of the cars you fixed didn't run. I mean, isn't that a terrible indictment of the system of intervention now?
Well, it seems to be.
Dr. Ch3's discovery that special education helped only 26% of the learning disabled students in her study is shocking, but it's not surprising. It turns out the system doesn't pay much attention to whether disabled students are actually learning. All students in regular education are routinely tested. Most students in special education are not. 13 states and the District of Columbia test less than 10% of special education students. Only one state, Kentucky, tests all its disabled students. If most disabled students are not being tested, how can we know whether special education is effective or not? Whether the students are actually learning?
We feel very strongly that kids with disabilities should be part of the accountability system in education. There shouldn't be a separate accountability system. They should be part of the same accountability system. And about half of disabled kids right now are not in district-wide testing, statewide testing, or even in the National Assessment of Educational Progress. We think that needs to change.
It results in children having low morale. It results in disabled children not being able to see themselves as a part of the fabric of the United States as adults, because they see their non-disabled peers studying hard. They see that they're having to take exams to show their progress, and they see that they're not having to do the same thing.
Why wouldn't the disabled kid say, hey, cool, I don't have to take the test?
Because I think in the reality, disabled children, like other children, want to be a part of the same system. They want to be doing what their peers are doing.
It's also not only what it says to the student, it's what it says to the people who work in schools. You're not accountable for outcomes for these kids because they're disabled.
Who loses when nobody's accountable? The graduation rate among disabled students suggests they're the losers. More than half fail to earn diplomas. We've had 20 years to make special education work. Why aren't we doing better?
I think what we've seen is over the last 20 years, we've created 2 separate systems of education. One for typical children and one for children with disabilities. We created, I think, our own worst nightmare, which was we ended up, instead of blending the systems of education, we ended up with 2 separate systems of education.
Special education has grown and grown. Nationally, from 1976 to 1994, the number of disabled students increased by 40%. But special education staff grew twice as fast. In California, disabled students increased 44%. Staff grew faster, up 98%. In Florida, students up 130%. Staff 235%. And in Texas, students increased only 30%. The staff tripled. With all the staff, special education has gotten more expensive. Today, special education costs twice as much per child as regular education.
Take your pencil.
Clearly, disabled students need personalized attention, but more staff does not necessarily mean more help in the classroom. Increasingly, special educators are found outside of the classroom. They're filling out forms, they're going to IEP reviews, or making sure the many procedures of the law are followed. Back in Denver, Les and Carolyn Reed were determined to keep their daughter in the regular classroom. Darcy's teachers, however, were having their doubts. One left us a note. Because of the severe autism Darcy has, I don't think full inclusion in a regular ed classroom all day long has been what is best for Darcy. We are looking at some different options for next year. Are you upset that the school is talking about changing her situation?
I'm upset that they have the audacity to think that we'd go for that, yeah. But I understand at the same time why they are, That's because they're regular ed teachers. They're not used to this. They're still feeling real put upon, and they really still think that if they got her in a room with other kids like herself, that they could really teach her some great functional things.